All right, adventure continues. Very late night last night. A lot of the other travelers that I was with were watching the Italian football game. It was a Saturday night, and I watched my first World Cup football game in Europe. Today we are taking a train down to Florence, so I needed to get up early. And then once I'm in Florence, check into my hostel there. Won't take as long to find it because Florence's public transportation is not boats. Very thankful for all the friends that I've made in Venice, mostly other travelers from all over. A lot of European Union, but boats here. The pigeons here are fearless. I just had to dodge to avoid one. Okay, maybe it's not the pigeons here. Maybe it was just that particular pigeon having a day. I don't know. But wow. It's like every single street corner feels picturesque. Mercato Centrale, all within a mile's range of the hostel that I'm staying at. Just absolutely in love with the architecture, both of everything outside and now the interior of this whole city. I just had an amazing vegan burger, which I'm not vegan, I'm just vegetarian. And typically I give myself once or twice a year that I'll eat seafood or some other kind of meat while I'm traveling. But that said, eating vegan has been so easy in both cities so far. There's so much good food here, and I so do not have a big enough stomach for it. Okay, first Florence gallery on the list is Gallery Accademia. The Academic Gallery, Accademia Gallery, I never know how to say it actually. Maybe one of the most touristy, popular spots on the list for a certain piece in particular. Security didn't take my bag, my phone, anything. They just took my tripod. I gotta get that back. Okay, so I knew he was big. I didn't, in my head, picture it as that big, the statue. There's a crowd, but I'm very thankful that it's not a far bigger crowd. Okay, there's dozens, hundreds, thousands of marble contrapposto sculptures from the Renaissance, right? And that will be far from the last Michelangelo that we see on this trip. But there's something about the mythology, the pop culture, right? Because that's an icon, that's an image, that is an image for us that has been so built up by pop culture because we see that replicated so many times online and media, and then to actually have a very real moment with it. The way they have it set up, right? You walk through a few hallways, you see some instruments, you see some busts and some paintings, Botticelli, Filippo Lippi, but then you walk into the big space that's David, and boom, you turn to the right and there he is. It's it completely outscales nearly everything else in that gallery. No, I love it. So got a lot of time, so I'm gonna see if I can walk to another gallery to see another David. Wound up having a lot more time than expected because I kind of assumed that gallery would be bigger. That said, it's not there's any shortage of art and galleries to see in the city. Speaking of which, it's just so cool. You're walking through buildings, you're walking through neighborhoods and city streets that are centuries older than the United States even is. I say that condescendingly. What I just mean is that there's it's just such a much larger and longer history, longer set cultures that the United States hasn't even had near enough time to come to. Okay, the Bergela Museum is closed, so I'll have to visit the other David tomorrow. But there's still another building or two that I want to for sure stop by. Okay, Palazzo Rucellai, or the Rucellai Palace. It totally looks mundane walking through the streets in Florence right now, but I think that's kind of the point. If I did not know exactly what I was looking for, I would have just walked past it. And it honestly feels like so fitting. The theme of Biennale Architecture in Venice yesterday was how will we live together, because this is like, oh man. So it's designed by Alberti, a Renaissance architect, and built around the 1440s. I want to say like 1446. And it was like where the Renaissance architecture was evolving out of Gothic. And we know Gothic for the intense verticals, right? These like intense power structures, very decorative. And obviously like the overarching philosophy of the Renaissance is humanism, right? It's like bringing back our ancient Greek and ancient Roman humanism. In a number of ways, Alberti took inspiration directly from ancient Roman humanism and used it to create a template for a new architecture in Florence and Italy, really. Which is kind of why it's like mundane, because the rest of the city began to look like this. I'm getting a lot of people staring at me because I'm literally just like sitting here talking about a building, but this is like exciting for me. So it looks mundane in the way that a lot of like Mies van der Rohe's modern skyscrapers look mundane now, because that's just now the common standard. Everything looked like that after the 1920s, right? These glass and steel boxes. Well, this was Alberti's template for architecture, for particularly private houses. So it was a palace for the Rucellai family. I think it was just after the Rucellai family married together with the Medici family, which is very, very important. A lot of power, a lot of money. So talking about like the differences of the three tiers, right? Not only Tuscan, Ionic to Corinthian, but we have like on the bottom, very large square bricks, which give like this big feeling of strength, along with the simplicity of the Tuscan columns, the Tuscan pilasters in the bottom. But then as we get up, right, second floor is smaller than the first floor. The second floor is using smaller bricks, as well as now these rounded arches, a very like Roman aesthetic, but that gives it this feeling of lightness, that things are getting lighter as you get to the top, right? Again, it's hilarious. I'm getting a lot of looks as people are just seeing me talking about this otherwise mundane building, but like this building is mundane because it set the standard. It was the template. This is Alberti being like, hey, design like this, and the city did it. It was one of like many products that he had for the Rucellai family. Okay, I can be done talking about a boring building, but I'm excited. Let's go find another otherwise very mundane building and completely nerd out on it. Okay, so we won't be able to get into this one because it still is a church, even though it was built in the 1400s. Some real cool just like first bits on this guy, right? One, designed by Brunelleschi. The same Filippo Brunelleschi as the Duomo, as the dome of the Florence Cathedral that is like the, heart, soul, the icon of Florence. Ugh. He designed it around the same time that he engineered the cathedral dome, right? Completely, just like Alberti, pulling from ancient Roman architecture, ancient Roman engineering. This one, the Pazzi Chapel, right? Built for the Pazzi family, is still being used today. The church bells are still being used. Part of a larger basilica plan, a move out of the cathedral architecture of our 1300s Gothic, right? A move away from that really strong verticals and a resurgence of our ancient Roman geometry, of our ancient Roman emphasis on ideal proportions and centrally planned spaces. So I don't know how clear it is in the video. Camera's probably a little smudged, I don't know. But there are Corinthian columns there, right? We see the same kind of front porch with Corinthian columns and then dome structure as the Pantheon. In fact, the whole space is really parallel to the Pantheon, which again, we'll see on the Rome extension of the trip. It's not just me. It's not just me. I am not the only one. Really excited it wasn't just me. I'm not the only one who's nerding out staring at a church through a gate. And if you look, it is getting even more attention now. But anyway, a lot of Pantheon vibes on that one, right? Like literally pulling back almost 1,400 years worth of architectural innovation and bringing back the ancient Italian, ancient Roman design. So the front porch has those 4 Corinthian columns, right? Just on the back, on the actual facade of the chapel itself, it has pilasters, which is again this like Renaissance, completely ornamental. The dome itself has an oculus, just like the Pantheon, so it lets in like tons of amazing like natural light and even like rainwater. And then what's cool is the dome also has this kind of like halo window, this ring of halo windows, which kind of resembles our Hagia Sophia and other Byzantine cathedrals, chapels. So I just talked to the guy that was looking through the gate around the same time as I was. He invited me to church service there tomorrow night. Not usually a church goer, but I might because that's what would get me inside that building. I'm in a very, very large public square. And that's like my favorite thing about so much of the Renaissance humanist architecture is that the whole value is on how are we renegotiating a public space. Big theme of the last 2 days. Anyway, here's the Brunelleschi that we know and love. It's just like a bigger, gaudier, more eloquent version of the Pazzi Chapel. All right, I'm a mess from walking around melting in the sun all day. My phone's very low on battery. I think it's time to recharge, clean up, and get ready for the night. Another absolutely gorgeous day in Florence. It'll get hot again in the afternoon. Hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, by that point we'll be back showering, resting up before the night, hopefully. But I'm okay if not everything goes to plan. I just recorded like a whole long bit talking about traveling alone and kind of like how I did it, how I came to doing it, why I feel more or less comfortable, but the phone didn't save it because it was a long file. And that is going to be some of the inevitable problems of vlogging on an iPhone right now. Sometimes the files get a little too big for it to process. Maybe we'll re-record that at some point, but we made it back to the dome. Pazzi Chapel is down right over there. We were there yesterday. Mercato Centrale, that's where we ate. There is Uffizi Gallery, not far, just by the river. My hostel is like over there. I'm not gonna pretend I know which roof it is. Yeah, so now we're going all the way back down just to climb up back there. Let's go. Man, Brunelleschi. Good for that guy. It's calling. Let's go. Maybe back to back wasn't the best idea. We're doing all right. You know, I was worried that being 2 weeks without my workout equipment, I wouldn't still be able to get a good workout in. But between all the walking and no climbing, we're gonna be all right. So Giotto, this is his bell tower, or his campanile. Early 1300s, I want to say like 1330s. Still Gothic, but Giotto is fascinating. He's like, I tell my students that Giotto is the bridge between Gothic and Renaissance. Was Giotto the last of the Gothic architects, or was he the first of the Renaissance architects? So Giotto unfortunately passed away before the bell tower was finished, but saw the start of it long before Brunelleschi would come around and engineer the Duomo. But together, right, Giotto, Brunelleschi, and then Alberti, who did the houses that we looked at yesterday. Those three Italians were the start of Renaissance architecture. So Giotto, his bell tower, Brunelleschi, his dome, and Alberti, whose houses we looked at yesterday. Those three, they were the founders of Renaissance architecture. He brought water up, wiser man than I. All right, Museo Bargello, the Bargello National Museum. Yesterday we met Michelangelo's David. The goal here is to meet Donatello's David. They're a little bit different, and you will see why. I cannot tell you how excited I am to see it between Michelangelo David and Donatello's David. This one. I want to spend more time with it, but they are closing. They're kicking people out. Okay, they were closing. Let's find somewhere, because I really want to talk about that sculpture. Actually, my phone battery's dying. I don't have my external with me because it was dead this morning because the outlet in the hostel didn't charge it. And it's time to do the Uffizi gallery. So I need to save some battery to record some things in there, so we'll find out. So we're back at the hostel now. Really need to wash up before meeting up with other travelers and other friends that I've been making for one more night in Florence. But let's talk Donatello. So Donatello's David, right? Like, Donatello's working like 1400s, like mid-15th century, 1430s, 1440s. He actually knew and was friends with Brunelleschi. So this is like the early Italian Renaissance. But if we're talking David, right, comparing it to Michelangelo's David, which is what we saw yesterday, Michelangelo's David wouldn't come for another 60 years. So we got Donatello's David first. Now, why David, right? The story of David and Goliath. If you're not familiar with that story, it's a biblical story from like the Christian Old Testament. David, the underdog, this like really lightweight kid, right, beats this 9-foot Goliath who is like literally wearing a helmet that's weighs more than I do. And he does it with the sling, the power of God in anime and all that, right? David is the story of the underdog coming out victorious. Now, around this time, right, like Florence is being attacked consistently by Milan. Florence was the underdog in this scenario. Milan was aggressive, they were strong, big military force, and very brutish, right? Whereas Florence was all about the arts, culture, the humanities, very different side of this like dichotomy. So Florence comes out victorious in so many of these attacks and celebrates that. Donatello's David takes this image of the character David and turns it into a fashion statement. David in this statue, we call him Sassy David because look at him. He's got the contrapposto lean, the don't really care. Look at his hat, his boots. Homie is naked except for this elegant hat, these tall boots, and then the sword. But then look at the sword, right? He's not like holding that sword like ready to fight. He's not holding that sword ready to battle. No, that sword is limp in his hands, right? He's standing on like the Goliath head underneath his foot, right? And the Goliath head has these wings on it, which again, evoking more mythology. A lot of the Renaissance was bringing back a lot of ancient Greek and Roman mythology and incorporating it into our Judeo-Christian stories, right? Mostly Christian stories. But the wing of the Goliath's helmet is like sensually riding up David's thigh. Like, this statue is not at all about the heroic and strong masculine victory of David, but it's about the victory of the underdog, the victory of arts, culture, and fashion over the brute force, right? And this is it. This is like the start of the Renaissance, where the Renaissance is going to bring back the values of ancient Greek and Roman humanism. I love it. Again, like, you know, we got Michelangelo's David, which we saw yesterday, and that one was just like definitely an evolution, more so evoking our like ancient Greek contrapposto Vitruvian canon. It's also just like larger in scale, right? Donatello's David is a human size. If it was on the floor, I'd be kind of standing like neck and neck with him, whereas Michelangelo's David is enormous. Michelangelo's David is a Goliath. So anyway, Michelangelo's David is probably the more iconic of the two, but Donatello's has a very, very, very important place in my heart. It's also like a bronze sculpture. Something really cool about Donatello's David as a bronze sculpture is he's doing bronze, casting bronze, just like the ancient Greeks did. And this is the first time in a very long time that you had freestanding bronze sculpture that was separate, that was carved separate from the building that it was on. Gothic, our sculptures were carved into the facade of the building. Donatello comes back and he starts casting just like the ancient Greeks did. We now have the rebirth of freestanding sculpture in the round. All right. I'm upset that I didn't get to record anything from Uffizi, but it's not like I don't have a lack of content on this vlog anyway. And if you're a student, you can just take AP Art History and learn all about Birth of Venus and learn about what is actually going on in that one. I'm grosser and sweatier than I've been on this trip so far after all that today. And I'm gonna go meet up with some other travelers that I met and hang out with them tonight for my last night in Florence. Tomorrow we take the train to Rome and we go see the Colosseum, the Forum, and a whole lot more. I'm actually kind of nervous because I think I overplanned. I don't think I gave myself near enough time to do everything I want to in Rome. We'll see.